Hey everybody, just here to read some more chapters of Semper Die. As you can see, I'm in my office, so there's a lot of junk everywhere. And also, my children are here, and it is daytime, so you may hear children beating on my door, or crying, or screaming, or whatever it is little girls do. So, today we'll be doing chapters 6 through, I hope, 10, provided nothing else happens. So, we'll just go ahead and get started. Chapter 6. No going back. So, Corporal Garrett said when we exited the tent. Zombies. Save it, I said. Wait till we have the others here. As we exited the tent, we strapped our Kevlars back on. Alpha Squad stood by the trucks, waiting on us. I halted when I got to them and took a look at my squad. First Fire Team. Corporal Sam Sloan, Fire Team leader. Solid Marine, took orders well, fearless, but not stupid. PFC Rebecca Sanchez, saw gunner. A little wild, a little undisciplined on her bursts, but accurate and ferocious. PFC Brett Marshall, Sanchez's assistant gunner. Good shot, and even without deployment experience, he had held up well in the engagement on Quantico. Lance Corporal Dylan Dakota, rifleman and comm specialist for the squad. He knew his gear and humped more than he should in his pack. Second Fire Team. Corporal Rob Garrett, Fire Team leader. Risk taker, Southern boy, all heart. His Marines loved him and he loved them. Lance Corporal J. Furry Ferreira, saw gunner. Jokester, prankster, ladies' man. One of those Marines officers hated. Hair always a little too long, just inside regulations. Looked like an undisciplined stain, but winds up being one of the most solid hands in a fight you could get. Had a real Godfather take on family. Lance Corporal Aaron Dominguez, Furry's A gunner. Quiet, young, seemed deep. Exceptional hand-to-hand skills on the mat. The kid never lost when the squad rolled in the dojo. PFC Kelly Turnbow, rifleman. Another solid Marine. A little wide-eyed, but fallen back on his training. He'd be good with some guidance. Alpha, we got a mission, I said. Is it hard? Furry asked. She asked plaintively. Sanchez finished for him, and the squad laughed. Even I smiled. All right, lock it up. We're on babysitting duty. Gotta escort a civilian VIP into a bioweapons facility in Fort Detrick and get her back out. To me, that sounds like room clearing and holding a perimeter. Hold up, boss, Dakota said, scratching at his red hair. We're going inside a bioweapons facility in the middle of the zombie apocalypse? Sloan shuffled his feet. That's Resident Evil. Literally the plot of the game. I pointed at him. That brings me to my next question. Who among you are gamers? Sloan, Dakota, Furry, and Turnbow raised their hands. I was surprised to see Sanchez's hand go up. What? She asked. Girls can play games too? Yeah, and suck at them, Turnbow muttered. You say something, Boot? Sanchez fired back. Turnbow straightened into the position of attention. I did not, Private First Class Sanchez. Yeah, I didn't think so. I held up a hand, feeling a little tired already. You guys know some stuff about zombies then, right? Man, Sloan said. Do we gotta call them zombies? Feels cartoonish. Zulus, Dominguez said. Let's call them Zulus. Or Z's. I knife-handed him. Good call, Dom. Tell me what you know about Zulu and do it quick. We're kitting out in the armory, and I need to know what to bring. According to our resident experts on Zulu evil, they fit into one of several categories. You had your necromancers raising the dead, but I was reliably informed that that was some World of Warcraft nonsense and therefore not applicable to our current circumstances. Then you had your plagues. Some kind of disease would spread and melt people's minds so they were feral, raving cannibals. That one seemed close. Situated in the plague category were bioweapons, which were just targeted diseases. Based on what Santiago told us, this one was the most likely scenario. On Furry's advice, we took one M203 grenade launcher per fire team, just in case any Weskers showed up. I didn't know what that was, but even Sanchez looked weary of having to fight it, so I didn't ask questions and just took the gear. Look, I don't know anything about any of this, I said to the squad. I watched the movies because Mila Jovovich was hot. Headshots, Sergeant. I turned around to see Gunny Hudson, kitted out with an M1014 shotgun, M9 pistol, and plate carrier stuffed full of shells. I cocked my head at his choice of weapon. Shotguns for Marines are for urban clearing, used more for blasting hinges or locks off of doors than anti personnel use. It's rare to see one in the field. What's that for, Gunny? He gave me a half smile and patted the Benelli M1014 slung in front of him. I played a lot of Nazi zombies back before I had kids. Shotguns are where it's at. Those of you with M4s, make sure you land headshots. Otherwise, you're going to burn your ammo for no reason. Sloan grinned. Yeah, Gunny, I knew it. You got to line them up, too. Take out 3 or 4 with one shot. Sloan! I barked. He jerked back. This is not a game. I panned my gaze around the squad. When one of these things bites you, you're gone. Doc turned into one of those things in seconds, devil dogs, so don't be pulling any stupid gaming tricks while we're out there. He's right, Gunny said. There's no respawns here. There's no med packs that will save you if you get bit. Sergeant, Sanchez asked, what about ROEs? Are we considering the Zulus people? I mean, are they Americans? I sighed. That's a good question, Sanchez. I was not given direction on that point. However, the fact that no one is talking a cure means we're not. Means we're not. All Zulus are to be considered hostile and put down. Looks like the red eyes are an easy tell. Any Ami guys still in Dietrich? Ferreira asked. I shook my head. Comms are dead coming out of the fort. We'll see what we can do when we're there. I checked them over. Each Marine was carrying 6 mags in the carrier, 1 in the rifle. Camelbacks were full, and they had 2 MREs, extra ammo, and gear related to their various MOS specialties in the pack. A gunners carried extra ammo for the saws, and Dakota carried the radio gear. We're all qualified expert, right? Gunny asked. Nods all around. Marshall got a shove, though. What's that for? Gunny asked. Furry grinned. Marshall made expert by 1 point, Gunny. Hey, you know what they call a med student who graduated with C's, right? Gunny said. A doctor! The squad yelled. Alpha headed off to the makeshift helipad, led by Corporal Sloan. I hung back with Gunny. You're coming with us, Gunny? He nodded. Heard you needed another fire team. I grabbed a few extra Marines, so you're already set. He pointed at 3 Marines walking up. One of them I recognized. Staff Sergeant, I said to Harrison. He nodded back at me. Sergeant, I appreciate the opportunity to not do this anymore. He gestured at the broken vehicles outside the line. I hear you're fighting Zulus. That's what you call them, right? I nodded. I brought a 240 team to fill out your squad. This is Corporal Solomon and his A gunner, Lance Corporal Park. I nodded at the 2 new guys. Solomon was a big black Marine, and Park was a little Korean guy. Both looked hard as nails. Solomon carried his 240 across his shoulder, and Park had the tripod. I pointed at them. You good to go on water and MREs? Park spit a stream of dip juice on the ground and answered, Hoorah, Sergeant. Good to go. Welcome to Alpha. Follow them to the bird. Gunny turned to me. No command issue here, Sergeant. You're in charge of your squad. I'll liaise with HQ on this. He patted the extra radio in his pack. And Staff Sergeant Harrison will command the 240 team as the new 3rd Fire Team, under your direction. I pounded fists with Harrison. Good to go. Let's get some payback. I swiveled away. Where are you going, Sergeant? Harrison asked with some amusement. Birds that way. I didn't look back. Gotta get the bags. I ducked into the command tent again. Colonel Santiago saw me and jerked his finger to an adjoining tent. I nodded my thanks and pushed through the chaos. Once inside, I saw Whitney standing in front of a folding table, blocking my view with his wide posterior. His guard saw me first and muttered something. Whitney turned and saw me. Didn't I say 10 minutes, Staff Sergeant? He snarled. It's been half an hour. No one gets ready for a mission in 10 minutes, sir, I said. Your VIP will appreciate the extra time taken. And it's Sergeant. He squinted at me in mocking disbelief. I don't give up. Please, Mr. Whitney, a woman's voice said. The lard bucket moved to the side, and I got my first look at the researcher we were escorting. Auburn hair, icy blue eyes, tiny, skinny, pinched features. Not a lot of concession to femininity. At least she wasn't in a wheelchair. Don't antagonize my escort. She rose from her seat and approached me. She was a little woman, but her eyes were blazing with excitement. I blinked. If I didn't know better, I'd say this chick was flushed with arousal. I put that to the side and nodded at her. Sergeant Slaughter, ma'am. Just letting you know that we're ready to take off if you are. She extended her hand and I took it gently to shake it. It was cold. Thank you, Sergeant, she said. But it's not ma'am. It's doctor. She smiled at me with dead eyes. Dr. Danielle Murano. Chapter 7. Tiny Packages. Before we go, Sergeant, Murano said, allow me a favor. I arched an eyebrow. What would that be? I would like to place a simple biotag inside your Marines. I glanced at her sharply. Say what now? She cleared an errant strand of hair from her face and gestured to the world. We are clearly facing a parasitic bioweapon of masterful design. I require all the data I can gather to track its effect on new subjects if I am to synthesize a counteragent. I glared at her. You're saying that if one of my Marines gets bit, you want to observe the transformation process? Morano leaned forward and put both hands on the table between us. Information wins wars, is that not so? Again, that crazy strand of hair fell across her face, and it drew my gaze to that light in her eyes. Understand, I come from a culture entirely different from mainstream America. The United States Marine Corps is a cult of indoctrinated warriors, constantly looking for enemies to wreck. I love challenge as much as the next Marine, which is a lot. I've seen Marines stacked up against impossible odds. I've seen a single gunner in a wrecked convoy clear his 50 cal and shred an ambush by himself. I've seen the ground tear itself apart in a storm of gunfire, but Marines charged through it, teeth gritted against the shrapnel slicing through their skin, slamming their chests against cover with their weapons spitting retribution. I've seen the fire in their eyes, the exultation in overcoming a challenge. But whatever was in that doctor's eyes was unhealthy in the extreme. She had the look of a woman with a fully activated God complex. For some reason, she thought everything happening was for her. Classic narcissist. I've seen it before. Usually only saw it in generals and some uppity colonels, along with anyone who worked for the agency. This kind would not hesitate to sacrifice every single one of us for her crusade, because it would be the right thing to do. And from the look of the goons behind her, they'd not feel a thing. I nodded once, shortly. Noted, Doctor. In case it wasn't clear, soldier, Whitney said, it's in order to get chipped. It was a struggle not to roll my eyes. Fat dude had to get his power move in whenever he could. I did give him a death stare, though. You don't call Marines soldiers. We're not Army. The Army is the Army. I've served with some awesome soldiers, but they're their thing, and we're ours. A non-idiot would know that, but then again, here we are. I wasn't about to argue semantics with a moron whose chairs were built to be load-bearing. I do comprehend what an order entails, sir, and my Marines are standing by. I would appreciate any intel you have in the building we'll be clearing for you. Morano smiled at me. Absolutely. Thompson, the map, please. One of the goons moved forward. He was a big, blue-eyed blonde, master race type. I could see in his eyes how disposable he thought I was. Typical merc. I ran into them all the time in Afghanistan, and it was a toss-up as to whether I wanted to shoot them or the Hajis more. Here you go, Thompson growled at me, tossing a cylinder. Inside was a rolled-up map. I touched it to my forehead, holding eye contact with him. Thanks. This thing fricking hurts, Ferreira whined, scratching at his arm as the Blackhawk choppers powered through the air. I didn't answer, but he was right. It did fricking hurt. Whatever Murano had injected into us went into our upper arms, like those diabetic monitors. It had been big, too. My tricep would ache for days. I didn't answer because I was too busy staring at the new world we lived in. Columns of smoke rose everywhere, reaching into the sky in billowing clouds. Even over the heavy drum of the chopper blades, I could hear car alarms going off, horns, sirens. Worst of all, in the trees beneath our feet, I saw shadows running, leaping. Thousands of red eyes turned up when they heard our choppers, and I could see them gleaming in the darkness below the trees. Hordes of them streamed after us, unable to keep up, but still trying. It was hard to believe we were still only on day one of this nightmare. Something sparked off the side of the chopper, and the pilot shouted, "Hang on!" Me and First Fire Team had already grabbed the loops on the Blackhawk when he jerked the stick to the side and a steep bank. "What was that?" I said into my headset. "Small arms fire," the pilot answered. "Civilians want us to go get them." "By shooting at us?" I asked incredulously. I saw the pilot's lips go thin. "They think we can't hear them," was all he said. I settled back into my seat, feeling darkness again. Got it. Our flight path took us over the woods of Virginia to cross the outskirts of Washington, D.C., and I have never seen a more dystopian vision of hell. Fires already raged across the city, and even over the chopper blades, I could hear that demented howling. "Sergeant," Ferreira said through the headset, "how many are there?" Dr. Morano's voice came onto the net. "At last census, the population of the capital of the United States was 663,603. This city was one of the first hit by the bioweapon. This, of course, does not account for outlying cities like Arlington, Quantico, and Baltimore." We flew on toward Fort Detrick in silence after that, watching the world eat itself beneath us. When we got to Detrick, we didn't land immediately. We had to knock first. The pilot hit the radio. Detrick, this is Charlie 29er, requesting permission to enter airspace, over." We hovered a moment outside of the base's no-fly zone. I tensed, just waiting for a Patriot to blow us out of the air. Detrick, this is Charlie 29er, requesting permission to enter airspace, over." No response. "Proceed to target and land the birds," Thompson ordered. Short, terse, professional. He and the other three mercs with Murano carried FN Scar H's with laser sights and drum mags, with extras hanging off of their black tactical vests. The pilot's voice came over the radio. "Protocol is to pilot," Thompson said without any tone in his voice. "They're dead." Looking out of the side of the chopper, I had to agree with him. We got Z's all over the place and no gunfire. They're not launching any missiles, man. The pilot didn't answer, but the Black Hawk lurched forward into Dietrich's airspace. I wondered if he knew anybody here. Man, I didn't know if I knew anybody here. The choppers touched down one after another on the helipad on the target building, a big hospital-looking complex on the south side of the base. Chopper 1 dropped me and First Fire Team, Chopper 2 dropped Second and Third Fire Teams, and the last one dropped Murano, her goons, and Gunny Hudson. The howling had already started, and the door gunners on the Hawks opened up on the streets below. Their M134 miniguns sounded like chainsaws churning through a tree, and a stream of 7.62 casings fell like a brass waterfall onto the helipad as the choppers pulled away. I jogged to the edge and peeked over. Sure enough, the shadows in the streets sprinted after the choppers. "We got a window, Marines," I said. "Let's use it." We stacked up on the door leading off the helipad into the interior of the facility. I nodded once at Sloan, and he took hold of the door handle and pulled it open. Immediately, Marshall and Sanchez padded inside, knees bent, M4 and M249 sweeping across the hallway. No shots. I flicked a finger forward, and First and Second filed in. It was dark inside, and hot. Must mean the power was out. Red emergency lighting bathed the interior in the color of blood. My boot hit something on the ground, and it skittered across the floor. 9mm casing. There were a bunch of them, probably issued to security. I glanced around. The walls, floor, and even the ceiling were covered in black streaks in the crimson glow. I keyed up my mic. Thompson, we have blood on the walls. Remain in position with third until we clear you. The mic clicked once, his only response. We poured through the hallway like oil. None of that stupid slow crap you see in movies. That's how you get shot. We moved at speed, almost running in a crouch, our weapons tracking across doorways and closets without pause. Moving, door left, clear, clear, moving. We cleared the hallway in a bounding formation. As one team stopped to clear both rooms on a hallway, the other moved past them to clear the next. It was some kind of hospital. The beds were empty, though most were covered in blood. The floor itself was covered in black footprints, some bare, some with shoes. All headed away from the central area of the floor, where the stairs and elevators were. Moving, door right. Clear, clear, moving. All I could hear was my breathing, the breathing of my Marines, the rustle of our gear, and the thuds of our boots on the hospital tile. Sweat ran down my face already. My legs were starting to feel the burn of our crouching advance. Moving, clear, clear, moving. Garrett's team took the last set of rooms at the end of the hallway before the opaque double doors. 2 Marines dipped inside each room, their weapons tracking floor corner to opposite ceiling corner to opposite floor corner. Moving, clear, clear, moving. Garrett glanced back at me. Clear, Sergeant. I nodded. Heard, I said quietly, then keyed up my mic. Hallway's clear. Bring her halfway in. I heard third obey, and I nodded at Garrett. All right. Open it up. He took one push bar while Ferreira took the other. They glanced at one another, and Garrett mouthed, 1, 2, 3. As silently as they could, they pressed the bars in, levering the doors open with painful slowness to minimize sound, and spun inside with their rifles up. Dom and Turnbow moved in immediately after, their rifles tracking across the open space. We were a second behind. It was a large atrium. There was a big tree in the middle, because what hospital would be complete without a giant space waster? Walkways stretched around 3 sides of the rectangular building, railed with stairways leading to the 2 short sides. We were on the long side facing the front of the building. Looked like we were 3 flights of stairs from the ground floor. That didn't bother me. What bothered me were the Zulus stumbling around the lobby area, pawing at the doors and ceiling-height glass. Not only that, there were several on our floor. They just hadn't seen us yet. I shot my fist beside my head in the signal for halt. The Marines froze, one eye to their RCOs, tracking targets on the ground floor. I twirled my finger around my head and started backing into the hallways. They followed. I pointed at Turnbow, who nodded and took a position by the door. The others squatted down by me. Numbers? I asked, speaking as quietly as I could. I already had my estimate, but wanted to check mine with theirs. 50? 60? Garrett guessed. That was about what I had seen. 4 on our floor, Sloan whispered. He met my eyes. They do that howling alarm thing? We're screwed. I grimaced. Suggestions? Dominguez held up his hand. I can take them quiet, Sergeant. We looked at him. Dom was our martial arts specialist, already a black belt in McMap with an instructor tab. He also had some kind of crazy outside training in Hapkido or something. All I knew from messing around in the pit was that he was good. Garrett rubbed his chin. You sure, man? Dom pulled out a K-bar. So few of us carried those anymore. Grandpa showed me how to use this, he explained. He was a Korean War Marine. We winced. I was back in old Corps days. Those Marines killed like they breathed. He glanced at Sanchez. Brains, right? She and the other gamers nodded. That's what kills them. I held the tip of a knife hand to his nose. Throats, diaphragms, and lungs are good secondaries. If you can keep them from howling, that's a win. My mic keyed up with Thompson's growl. Slaughter. I clicked it. Busy. Hold on to your panties. Speed it up. Dick, I muttered. I looked back at Dominguez. We'll cover you from the hallway. If it looks like you're tagged, we'll smoke them and fall back down the hallway. Saws will take it from there. Sanchez and Ferreira nodded, gripping their 249s tighter. Good idea, Sergeant. Z's hate checkpoints. Ferreira grinned at me. We'll make a gamer out of you yet. Shut the frick up, furry. This was the day I officially became a little afraid of Dominguez. We quietly pushed back onto the walkway around the atrium. Without hesitation, Dom glided forward, somehow not making a sound even in boots and battle rattle. He held his knife low in his right hand, point angled toward his target's lower back. He approached at an angle, not directly behind. I had my sight picture on the thing's head. I was ready. Dom crouched lower to the ground for an instant, then struck like a snake. His gloved hand clamped around Zulu's mouth just as his blade punched up under its chin. The Z spazzed, its arm seizing, but Dom twisted the knife with a brutal jerk and the thing collapsed, limbs jerking. Dom caught it and gently laid it to the ground, pulled the blade from its skull and wiped the blade clean. Then he shot me an actual thumbs up. Holy sh... Garrett muttered, and I clenched my fist at him to shut up. The next Z knelt about a dozen paces away, back to Dominguez. It was picking at something on the ground. Dominguez slammed the tip of his knife into the base of its skull and wrenched it around, again muffling the thing's mouth. A minute later, all 4 Zulus lay dead on the ground, and Dominguez padded back to us like a panther. Clear, he said, and squatted down next to us. Clear? Garrett asked, dumbfounded. Dude, they're totally making Mexican Assassin's Creed after this, Dakota whispered, and grins flashed all around Alpha. Good to go, I mouthed. Let's find a way downstairs. I'm gonna drink some coffee. Chapter 8. Zulu Time. With the hallway and the floor cleared, Staff Sergeant Harrison brought up Dr. Morano and Thompson's crew. She knew the facility better than we did, and the Mercs had studied the layout extensively. While Solomon and Park covered the nearest stairwell with their 240, Thompson laid out the facility map and pointed at the stairway at the end of the east hallway. He tapped it once, moved to the first floor diagram where the stairwell exited out, then traced his finger down for about 30 yards to an elevator. He glanced at me and mouthed, "Underground." I winced and signed back. No power. He smirked like I was stupid. Generator below. I glared at him. Fine. We just had to sneak 20 people around a massive horde of zombies. The doors to the east hallway were already jammed open, probably when the choppers arrived. Looked like most of the Zs had already moved that way, following the noise of the rotors and leaving us an empty hallway. Sergeant, Sanchez whispered. I scooted closer to her and put my ear next to her mouth. Watch out for trapped ones, she said. They can't open doors, so if they get stuck and we open their door, they're gonna jump on us. Great. Now we had to watch for ambushes in an unknown environment. This zombie crap sucked. Heard, I muttered, and moved off. In a series of rapid-fire gestures, I assigned third to cover our backs, while first and second moved on clearance. We shuffled down the hall at speed, weapons twitching around corners. There was no way this luck would hold, and I could feel my Marines tensing at their continued fortune. Fortunately, if there was anything that made Marines frosty, it was passing an inordinate amount of time without getting violated by the great cosmic green weenie. We knew the other shoe would drop, and we just braced for impact. Sure enough, the weenie did not disappoint. We sent our pet ninja into the stairwell first, piling after him with rifles cocked and locked. He slammed his knife under the chin of a trapped Zulu and wrenched it around while I slammed the butt of my rifle into its forehead. The thing collapsed with a wheezing gasp. Move, I growled, and we did. Our boots rang off of the steps, no matter how we tried to cushion. I figured all the Zulus that could were at that big glass front, still trying to follow the choppers. Sweat stung my eyes, and I swiped at my eyeline with my sleeve. Double metal doors at the bottom, that cheap tan color the military seemed to love so much. I scanned the hallway through the narrow vertical window. It seemed clear. As gently as possible, we eased the push bar in and slid into the hallway. So far, so good. Which is what the dude fallen 40 stories said on every floor, till the last one. The elevator we wanted was on our side of the hall. The corridor itself was as trashed as the others. Equipment scattered across the floor with torn bedding and sprays of blood everywhere. I was starting to notice the smell, too. Stale air mixed with the iron stench of blood and some other bodily fluids. As soon as Morano's team exited the stairwell, I held up a fist for halt, all eyes fixed on me. Slowly, I tapped a broken monitor on the ground with the toe of my boot. It gave a tiny squeak on the floor. Nods all around. They would check their feet to reduce noise. I pointed to the elevator and held up 2, then 3 fingers. Second and third would set up fire lanes around this elevator shaft. According to Morano's goons, it was the only way in or out of the secure underground facility. Harrison's Marines immediately dropped the tripod for the 240 they were carrying and trained it down the hallway. They had it up in condition 1 in under 60 seconds. Park set up all his ammo cans from his pack next to the weapon system. Second fire team set up on either side of the 240, careful not to obstruct its lane. Growls surged down the hallway, and we froze. The sound persisted for a few seconds, then subsided. I glanced at Gunny. He nodded back, pantomiming a deep sigh of relief. I gestured to Morano's team. First fire team and I would descend with them to secure the elevator. Morano scooted forward, her little lab coat blowing around her, and she rapidly tapped out a code sequence into the nondescript keypad by the door. 10 seconds later, the elevator dinged. It actually dinged like it was 1973. All the low-level snarling halted for a single frozen second. Then the howls started. The same mind-shattering, ululating gasp ramped up to 10, blasted down the hall, and I saw the first red eyes lock onto us as feet pounded the tiles. Well, stealth is over, I said. Weapons free, Marines. Headshots if you can. Ferreira? He glanced at me, hefting his 249. Fire when the 240 reloads. He nodded. Last thing we needed was both squad weapons down at the same time. The zombies poured into the hallway like a screaming flood as the elevator doors opened. Get in! I barked at Morano's team, just before the 240 opened up and we stopped hearing things. In an enclosed space, the roar was deafening. It completely swallowed the howl of the Zulu tribe, drowning them out in a deafening thud-thud-thud that threatened to pop our eardrums. It popped more than eardrums on the Zulus. Marine Corps machine gunners are trained to fire in bursts. It allows them to stay on target and preserve as much ammunition as possible. Generally, you hold the trigger for the duration of Die, Fuzzy Bunny, Die. Corporal Solomon's 1st DFBD chopped into the front ranks of Zulus. Black blood and chunks of flesh blasted from their chests and abdomens, staggering the things. None of them dropped. They kept coming, 30 yards away. Headshots, I said! I shouted. Harrison nodded and the barrel tracked up a tick. The second Fuzzy Bunny went out. This time, heads popped like rotten cherries, and 6 or 7 Z's dropped, tangling the legs of the ones behind. Frag out! Gunny yelled, and every Marine present clapped hands over their ears just before the frag round chunked out of his underslung M203. The round arced above the Z's heads. Gunny Hudson's placement, expert in the extreme. It impacted on the overhead frame of the double doors bisecting the hallway, right in the middle of the onrushing horde, and detonated. I could feel the thum in my chest, and my body tensed, ready for the shrapnel to rip through my flesh. But Gunny knew what he was doing. The mass of the horde absorbed the pressure wave and shrapnel. Zombies hit the deck in droves. Those closest to the blast shredded into organic tatters, while those further out slumped to the floor, their rotten brains pulped to jelly. I glanced at Hudson, and he shot me a thumbs up. We got this, Sergeant, he shouted. We'll hold there. I tapped my radio. Stay on comms. He nodded, snapped his shotgun to his shoulder, and capped a Z at 20 yards. The blast lifted the runner from his feet and threw it backward into the horde. Alpha Squad! I shouted. Sergeant! Came the answer. What do we do? Kill! Alpha roared. I slipped into the now packed elevator, trying to lever my body and weapon in next to Thompson's massive shoulders. My chest felt tight, leaving half my squad here, but the mission had to come first. Harrison and Hudson would take care of my Marines. It was time to see what Morano knew. More coffee. Chapter 9. Womb of Hell. As the elevator descended, we could still hear the gunfire holding steady above us. I'd been in firefights in Fallujah, Kabul, and countless villages out in Afghanistan. I knew how to tell disciplined fire from panicked, and the bursts I heard above me were measured. Alpha was fine. I put them out of my mind and put my head in the game. Sanchez's warning popped up in my memory, and I muttered, "Watch it when the doors opens, Marines." When the doors open, Marines. First glanced at me. "If any of those things are stuck down here," I elaborated, "then the party upstairs is driving them wild. Get your NVGs on. Get ready to sweep the facility." Thompson grunted. "Your team holds the elevator," he rumbled. "Don't go wandering anywhere else." I glared at him. "Don't give me orders," I said. "We'll do our jobs, whatever that takes, without any input from hobbyists." The big guy shouldered me in the cramped confines, slamming my head into the metal doors of the elevator. His voice took on a deadly edge as he snarled in my ear. "You're not cleared for this floor, ground pounder. My team will sweep the labs. Babysit the elevator. Stand by for our return. Be found anywhere else and I will take action. No one's going to notice a couple extra jarhead biters staggering around. Have I made myself clear enough for you, Slaughter?" I took a breath, let it out slowly, and lifted my head off of the door. I twisted around to look him in the eye. "Aye, aye, douchebag. Sanchez, there will be no problems, as we are all upstanding Marines and citizens, aye, Sergeant?" Sanchez grinned. No problems, aye, Sergeant." A growl rose from the Nordic giant's chest, and I could smell the violence rising. Homeboy didn't like being mocked. Good. My blood was rising too, and I was itching for an excuse. Just give me a reason. Sadly, it was not to be. "That's sufficient, Mr. Thompson," Dr. Morano said, interceding before the two of us killed each other right then and there. "I'm sure Sergeant Slaughter understands his role here." Thompson glanced at us with those dead shark eyes of his, but surprisingly, instead of pushing the situation, he eased back and said, "Yes, ma'am." His hand rested on his scar, and his eyes had that amused cast to them all of a sudden, as he smirked at some kind of inside joke. Really, really didn't like the implication there. Then the elevator started to slow, and I shoved it out of my mind. I could already hear hands clawing at the door. The stupid cliched thing dinged again, and the doors split open, admitting a forest of grasping limbs. Red emergency lighting bathed the hall beyond, and dozens of pairs of crimson eyes lit in the black. The howls and snarls surged to a cacophony as soon as they caught sight of us. As soon as I fit through the crack of those opening doors, I exploded out of the elevator into the middle of them. I swept their hands aside with my rifle and shoved them all back, staggering the horde. I then ducked and clapped my hands over my ears just as first fire team opened up behind me with their weapons. Fire spit above me, and my covered eardrums still shook with the thunder of automatic and semi-automatic fire. I kept my eyes and mouth closed, and brains and blood spattered on my back with Marshall, Sanchez, Sloan, and Dakota's coordinated fire blasting the Zulus point blank. The first volley scythed down the crowd just outside the elevator, clearing everything around me. With all of them focusing on me, that protected our cargo in the elevator. Now we could clear the rest of the room. I spun on one knee, rising again as the closest Z's fell backward, got my sight picture on the black strip between red eyes, and started putting 5.56 there. With my precision fire and Sanchez's 249, we cut the crowd of 20 or so down to scrap parts in seconds. With the first threat gone, I pulled down the monocular folded up on my Kevlar over my left eye. The world went half green and showed infrared lasers stabbing into the darkness. Zero movement. I swept the area as first fanned out behind me. "Clear," Dakota whispered, and Marshall and Sanchez echoed him. "Clear, Sergeant," Sloan said to me, and I turned back to Thompson and his team. "Clear. How long do you need?" Dr. Morano stepped out past Thompson. She did not seem at all fazed by the organic shrapnel glazing the floor. That kind of bugged me, too. "No more than 5 minutes, Sergeant." Thompson chucked his chin at his team, and the four brutes filed out of the elevator, scars raised and green laser beams already active. Thompson shouldered past me with an amused grunt. I had to fight not to shoot him in the calf. "Stay," he said, still with that smirk. "Play dead." As the contractors moved off, I shook my head to clear it. The freak was getting to me. I felt Sanchez shift next to me. "Man, Sergeant, she said. I thought you were going to pop him. I shrugged and cracked my neck. It's all right, Sanchez, I said. Maybe something will eat him. Sanchez grimaced. Do these things eat creatine? Not like he does, Marshall deadpanned, and we chuckled. Gulf Sierra Hotel. This is Sierra Sierra. How read? I released the call button on my radio and waited. We were deep underground, something like 30 floors if I remembered right. We couldn't hear any gunfire, but that didn't mean there wasn't any. I got no response. Too far underground, Sanchez muttered, and I nodded. Just checking, I said. It sucked just waiting in this weird lobby, whatever it was. I'm not made for inaction, and the tension was getting to me. I checked the area for the 100th time in 2 minutes. Still just a weird plastic plant in the corner, a couple of black chairs with vinyl upholstery complete with blood spatter and bullet holes, and the required pictures on the wall of the chain of command. We could hear echoes of gunfire from Thompson's team. Their silent scars coughed more than barked, but if you knew what to listen for, it was pretty clear. Growls and howls would cut off almost immediately, and I never heard the telltale chatter of panicked fire. Grudgingly, I had to admit they seemed like they knew what they were doing. Of course, they'd probably been capping ISIS leaders and their kids Black Ops style before all this, so they were right at home underground shooting weaponless civilians in the dark. I checked my watch. 6 minutes. They're late, I muttered, shifting my stance. Sloane shrugged. No plan survives contact with the enemy? He offered. There might be a plan, I growled. I'm just not sure we were let in on it. Stay here. Sanchez glanced at me, the eye not covered by an NVG monocle concerned. You sure, Sergeant? She asked. They were pretty clear about us not seeing their toys. I cracked my neck. It'll be fine. What are they going to do, court-martial me? You're gonna get in trouble, Sloane muttered sing-song. I'm a 13-year-old. I'm 13-year-old. I'm a 13-year sergeant, Corporal, I said, cracking my neck. I've been in trouble. I tucked my rifle stock into my shoulder and stepped off. After a few seconds, I heard Marshall say, Hey, if you think about it, it's a good time to be a necrophiliac, right? I heard a very feminine groan, then a, Shut up, Marshall. I grinned and moved into the underground of Dietrich. It was cold down here. Power might have failed elsewhere, but Murano's little kingdom must have had its own generator backups. The main lights were still off, though, leaving the sterile white hallways bathed in a red glow. I say sterile. I mean austere. With all the blood covering everything, this place was nowhere near sterile. The new underground facility, the underground facility was a maze, a network of nondescript hallways with doors spaced every 20 or 30 feet. There were no names on the doors, just a letter with 2 numbers after it. I was seeing B17, B18, etc. Probably had something to do with confusing intruders, and it was working. I had no idea where I was, and I had to keep a running mental log of what turns I had taken so I could get back. Long glass windows let me see in some of the rooms. Some had banks of computers, all shattered beyond repair. In one, I saw a broken keyboard and little plastic keys scattered across the floor, next to a pair of motionless legs hidden by a desk. Dried blood exploded from around the corpse, and I winced as my mind immediately started animating that encounter. Others had surgical tables in the center, cameras in the corners, sinks along the wall, and drains in the floor. Tools and instruments scattered across the bloody tiles, and I could see scratches on the doors, showing where the staff down here had tried to hold the doors against the Z's outside. What I couldn't figure out is how Zulu had made it down here in the first place. If this had been an airborne contagion, it should have hit the whole floor simultaneously through the AC system. Like I said before, it was cold down here. The system was clearly working. So how were people fighting for their lives to hold a door if they'd all been infected at the same time? Something wasn't adding up. I ducked through the rooms, silent as a shadow. I took care not to disturb anything. I didn't need Thompson's team hearing movement and taking shots at me. I saw Zulus scattered around the facility, heads shredded by 7.62. These Blackwater types loved their scars, since it was easier to source NATO rounds internationally. Looked like they were using the 13-inch barrels, too. Better for close-in and urban fighting. I didn't hear the coughs of suppressed automatic fire anymore. They must have cleared their AO. I stayed tense and locked in. Those guys were here to escort Murano, not clear the floor. If there was a Zulu trapped somewhere, I didn't want it catching me with my pants down. The Z's themselves were dressed in military uniforms or lab coats. Looked like a mix of army and civilian personnel. The faces looked strange, though. Different than I expected. Cheeks entirely sunken in, skin stretched to paper thickness, red eyes bulging. They seemed more rotten than the ones we'd already dealt with upstairs. Scattered around them were bodies that weren't Z's. The scatter pattern of the corpses indicated they died running. I knelt next to one. Her throat had been ripped out, and from the ground, meat of her shoulders and belly. Her throat had been ripped out, and from the ground, meat from her shoulders and belly. Something had been feeding on her. No red eyes, though. Must have died before infection. I checked the next one. This one had bullet wounds in the chest and neck, entering the back and exiting out the front. I frowned. That looked like friendly fire, which is understandable enough in this kind of chaos. But from the direction they'd fallen, they looked like the fire came from the direction Murano and her team had just entered. That bugged me. I didn't know why it bugged me, but I let it bug me. I was certain the more I saw, the more the problem would untangle in my mind. I glided through the hallway, hugging the wall but not too close. If the contractors opened up on me, I didn't want to risk missing shots skipping along the wall and hitting me. Speaking of the wall, I stopped for a couple of seconds, staring at it. The white plaster had deep grooves dug through it, and random patterns. One of these things had been swiping at the wall with its fingertips. Trying to dig out? That couldn't be right. It wasn't deep enough for digging. This looked more like boredom. I'd seen this kind of thing before, but from Marines. If Marines got bored enough, they started decorating everything in dicks. Porta-johns in the field, especially, covered in cartoon penises. That also bugged me. Everything I had seen so far indicated that these things were absolutely brain dead. They ran straight into automatic weapons fire, for instance. So now one of them was wandering around down here, stuck, and swiping at the wall because it was bored. Don't like that. Really don't like that. I moved on, the hairs on the back of my neck tingling. Doorway to my left, dark. I pied the corner through the door, meaning I stepped around it, sweeping the room with my rifle, checking all possible places an enemy could be hiding. My eyes adjusted quickly, and I saw a lot of things in a couple of seconds. First, two Z's sprawled across the floor, clearly dead with fresh blood patterns sprayed behind them. There were what looked like glass enclosures on the far wall, or more likely really thick plastic, hosting said blood patterns. I'd seen cages like that in zoos so people could see the animals in their enclosures. Their doors were open, and the dead Zulus lay just outside those doors. From the spacing and placement of the bodies, they must have been inside. Merc team must have let them out and capped them immediately. Second thing I noticed was that inside those pens were some kind of capsules set on a table. They looked the same as the CS pellets the Corps used for annual gas chamber training. I glanced up at the corners, and sure enough, there were a couple of cameras angled down at the pellet. I had a real bad feeling, so I looked at the Z's again. They were wearing convict orange with numbers on their backs. Felons in cages, turned to Z's, let out and killed by Murano's goons. Gas capsules, but no gas masks. Oh man. Finally, my brain identified the acrid stench standing out from the sick, sweet smell of rotten flesh. Kerosene. The room had been doused in accelerant. Only one reason to do that. This isn't a retrieval op. This is cleanup. Worse, the Z's had the same extent of decay as the others down here, if not more. Definitely more than 2 days, which shouldn't be true since this was all supposed to have started yesterday, right? Crap, I said quietly. I saw something white on the gray flesh of one's arm. I approached quietly, my rifle aimed straight at its skull, even though it already bloomed open, red and raw. I didn't think a Z could evolve immunity to headshots, but I wasn't taking any chances. I was already living in a freaking video game as it was. I nudged it with the barrel. Nothing. I reached down and checked the white square. It was a medical tag reading Subject D14. It was on the exact same location as the tag Morano had put in us. Crap, I muttered. See anything you like, meat? Thompson's voice growled out of the blackness. I twisted around but managed to keep my rifle barrel down. These were in cages, weren't they? I asked, even though it wasn't a question that needed an answer. Thompson's eyes were cold in the dim emergency lighting. Get back to the elevator. You're not cleared for this facility. Yeah, I definitely wasn't. Especially since I had just found out that all of this had started here. Chapter 10. Scars. We glared at each other for a few seconds. I could feel the tension in my body, the go time energy pooling in my muscles. I didn't bother asking questions. Neither did he. I'd seen stuff I wasn't supposed to see, learned stuff I wasn't supposed to know. The muzzle of his scar wasn't picking up yet, but his fingers curled around the grips. He was thinking it. That's okay. If he wanted a showdown between rifles, that was something I could handle. I let out a breath slowly, and Thompson lifted his chin at the sound. He smirked at me, and I saw his muscles tense. Just before I made the call to shoot first, Thompson's mic blurted, "Boss!" Neither of us moved, still watching the other. I tilted my head toward his radio. You gonna get that? Slowly, not taking his eyes off me, Thompson tapped his ear. What? Nothing in my radio. Great. They're operating on a separate channel, too. I have good ears, despite all the firefights I've been in, and Thompson had his volume turned up too loud in his earpiece. Must have been too good for Ear Pro when he was in. Smart one's still here, boss. Looks like it's circling the dock. She thinks it's Franz. Thompson's face went grim and he straightened. He glanced back at me. Get back with the other dogs, meat. He strode out of the cage room, 2 fingers to his earbud. If he's still here, he's pissed. Keep on the dock and... His voice faded out. I stared after him, trying to come to terms with what I'd just discovered and heard. My pulse pounded in my ears at the implication. What on God's green earth is a smart one? Against my better judgment, I elected to do what Thompson told me. I double-timed it back to Alpha, not bothering to clear the rooms I'd passed. If something jumped out at me, I'd rip it apart. My mind blazed with fire. Thompson hadn't been hunting me. He'd been hunting the smart Zulu, the one called Franz. I burst back into the lobby, calling out, It's Slaughter! Don't shoot! Sloan, Marshall, and Sanchez lowered their weapons to the ground. Sup, Sergeant? Find anything cool? Marshall asked, but I ignored him. I moved to the wall where the pictures of the ranking brass showed. I jumped past President, Veep, SecDef, and Base Commander down to the last picture on the wall. Colonel Franz, head of USA AMRID, the Army's Infectious Disease Research Division. I looked at the picture, or pointed at the picture. You guys seen a Zulu that looks like this guy? Sanchez shook her head. No, Sergeant. Marshall echoed her, but Sloan, a weird tone in his voice, asked, Is he your height? Wears his rank in his scrubs and sways in the shadows like a super creep? That was way, way too specific. Without hesitation, all 4 of us whipped our rifles up to aim behind me and spat gunfire. 5.56 streaked through the air, but hit nothing. With a howl, something dark and huge blurred back into the black hallways of the facility. I surged forward to give chase, but Sloan called out, Sergeant! I hesitated and glanced back. Marshall and Sloan had backed into the elevator car. Marshall boosted Sloan up, who reached through the top door on the elevator and grabbed something. Sloan dropped back down and handed me the object. Telegram, Sergeant. I grimaced. Priorities. Loath as I was to do it, I hit my radio. Thompson, heads up. Big Z heading your way. Dodges bullets. Acknowledged. That taken care of, I turned back to the object in my hand. It was an insulated metal water bottle, civilian style. I unscrewed the cap and pulled out a piece of paper. Half out of ammo. Birds coming back. Second wave of Zulus swarming from Dietrich. Wrap it up. It was signed, Gunny. I glared at my Marines. All right, we're out of here. I keyed up my mic again. This is Sergeant Slaughter. The bus is leaving, Doc. Time to go. Her voice came over the radio. Sergeant, I require more time to complete. I cut her off. Perhaps you did not understand me, Doctor. If we don't leave right now, we will not leave. Drop what you're doing or we will come collect you. Silence for a moment. Then her voice came back. Very well, Sergeant. 2 minutes. 3 minutes later, the elevator doors opened, and the gunfire and howls deafened us. The reek of rotten flesh and dead blood was a punch in the nostrils. I actually stopped in shock at the devastation. Z's half of the hallway was full on black with blood and guts. Bodies in uniforms and scrubs carpeted the floor, clogging the Zulu advance as they tried to claw their way past the growing wall of their dead. The 240 chugged out another volley, ripping through the front rank of clambering zombies. Heads shredded off their necks or popped like blisters. These ones all had army ACUs. Dietrich's wider zombie population knew we were here. Barrel switch! Park shouted, and the other fire team stepped forward as Solomon and Park ejected the 240's barrel, Ferreira's M249 leading. The saw chattered, rocking the Marine's torso back, but he kept his shoulder forced into the stock and his aim on the horde. No fuzzy bunny here. Ferreira kept the trigger down and strafed back and forth across the hallway. He needed to. There were hundreds of them, jammed into that hallway like rush hour in Baltimore. The saw and M4s barely held back the horde, spitting fire and popping skulls, but as Zulus stumbled, it dropped their heads and made their movement erratic. It took more shots to put a Z down then, and that meant fewer of them died per second. They were getting closer, pulling themselves through a swamp of rotten flesh and the storm of gunfire. Oh, we gotta go. Gunny Hudson glanced back at us as we spilled out of the elevator. I wasted no time, but circled my finger above my head and stabbed it at the back stairwell. He nodded once and shouted, Marines, pack it up! Third, move first! First and second, staggered fallback! Move! Solomon and Park broke down the M240 in seconds, the Asian kid hiking the tripod onto his shoulder while the black Marine backpedaled with the weapon held low. Staff Sergeant Harrison jogged with them, checking rooms they passed for any movement. Thompson rushed Dr. Morano down the hallway, his brute squad surrounding the tiny woman. Their packs were partially unzipped, and I saw documents, hard drives, and laptops inside. I gritted my teeth, knowing what was on those drives, but I had bigger problems right now. I stepped forward and fired twice. Aziz's head rocked back with a spurt of black, and it swerved to the side, crashing into a wall and falling over. I adjusted, double-tapped again. Again. Gunny in second fell back, sprinting 10 yards and snapping into cover. Clear! I shouted, moving! And first seized fire, sprinting down the hallway to the stairwell. At the drop in fire, the Z's surged forward. I'm up, they see me, I'm down. The ditty pulsed in my head. As soon as we passed second, they opened fire. 3 M4s and a shotgun and a saw blasting at the horde. More Zulus hit the deck, but they still gained ground on us. We hit the stairwell. Clear! I bawled out, and second picked up and ran. The Z's were a couple yards away from them now. Gunny had clearly given them some instruction while I was gone, because second ran single file down the hallway, leaving firing lanes on either side. I didn't look for headshots anymore. I just kept my rifle at head height and pulled the trigger as fast as possible. Reloading! Sanchez shouted, and the box for her saw hit the deck. We increased our rate of fire, trying to account for the drop in pressure, but the Z's howled like they knew what had happened and barreled toward us. Second slammed into the stairwell, Ferreira leading, followed by Dominguez and Turnbow, tailed by their TL, Garrett. Gunny shoved Garrett through the door and shouted, Clear, Slaughter! Move it, devils! I roared, and Sanchez tucked her saw to her chest and booked it up the stairs. Marshall and Dakota right behind her. I tapped Sloan on the shoulder, and he ran, his boots echoing in the stairwell. It was just Gunny and me, side by side now against the Z's. Our weapons barked in unison, our barrels twitching from target to target and spilling zombies to the floor. His shotgun blasted 3 times, blowing Zulu skulls to bloody fragments. We clicked empty at the same time, and the silence was deafening. Welp, Gunny said, and we both turned and sprinted at the same time as the howls of the Z's rose behind us. The horde crashed through the door below us as Gunny and I pounded up the stairs, slamming fresh mags into our weapons as we ran. 3 flights, and we did it in about 45 seconds, humping gear. I swore as I gasped for breath, and Gunny barked at me, Save it, Sergeant! You gotta be kidding me. Gunny never quits. But I did what he said. We burst out of the stairs on the 3rd floor, the Z's 1 flight below us and gaining. First and second waited for us, weapons trained on the doorway. We could hear Z's crashing into the walls as they threw themselves up the stairs to reach us. Frag out! Gunny yelled as he chucked an M67 baseball into the stairwell. As one, both fire teams turned and booked it for the atrium at the end of the hallway. The grenade cooked off and the hospital shook behind us. I couldn't see Third or Thompson's team. They must have already advanced to the helipad. The howl intensified behind us. Gunny's frag had probably bought us a few seconds, but we were humping gear and the Zulus were frenzied now, on open ground and no bodies to trip them up. Haul it, Marines! I yelled. Garrett reached the atrium first. Kid was all heart and a fantastic runner. He slammed his shoulder into the door and exploded into the atrium, his rifle up. Move it, second! He shouted, his foot holding the door open for us while he cracked off shot after shot. We crowded through the door, and Garrett slammed it shut behind us. The Z's were only a couple yards back, but he looped some 550 cord around the two pole handles and yanked them tight. Alpha, moving like we shared the same brain, slammed into the doors just as the Z's did. Hold them, Marines! I roared. Oorah! Alpha roared back. Our boots skidded on the squeaky floor as we drove our shoulders into the metal frames. Multiple impacts hit the doors, but they were not coordinated, and for the moment we had the advantage of unity. The pressure would overcome that soon. Garrett wrapped the cord around the handles around 20 times, trying some kind of complicated knot I had never seen before, threw his hands into the air like he was on MasterChef at the end of a time limit, and shouted, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, Don Sergeant! Let's go, Alpha! Gunny shouted, and we hauled our butts through the atrium to the hallway we'd entered through. My vision was getting black spots from the panicked running. That last hallway took forever to run down, but the light at the end of the tunnel was blinding. We could hear the chop of the copter blades, and nothing had ever sounded sweeter. Again, Garrett was first through the doors. So they killed him first. When the door burst open from Garrett's shoulder hit, I saw the M240. Instead of being seated on its tripod, aiming down the hallway to cover our retreat, the crew-served weapon lay on its side next to Corporal Solomon's unmoving body. The big Marine sprawled on the ground, his desert stained by spreading crimson. My run slowed as I saw Staff Sergeant Harrison and Lance Corporal Park, both down. Harrison, clutching at a bloody hole in his gut, was still trying to crawl away as Thompson loomed over him. The blonde merc put another round into the back of the Marine's head, blasting a crater into his skull. I screamed a warning as Thompson's team, their scars already trained on the doorway, opened fire. Corporal Garrett couldn't even raise his weapon before a full volley of 7.62 hit him. His chest erupted in bloody sprays just before their aims twitched upward for the headshots. In a twisted sort of reasoning, he probably saved most of us. Fast as he was, he'd hit the door and shifted to the side to clear the way from Marines behind him, reaching out to hold it open again like the leader he was. That shifted Thompson's firing lanes out of the hallway, which gave us an extra 2 seconds to hit cover before the mercs adjusted their aims. We dived for the rooms on either side of the hallway as rounds chewed into the tile. Sanchez screamed in rage and fear as bullets sprayed ceramic shrapnel around her. Snarling, I dipped my head out into the hallway to see Thompson and his team coolly walking backwards, their rifles spitting fire at the doorway as they approached the chopper. Dr. Morano, her expression detached even as murdered Marines stained the pad in front of her, was already belted in. The doors behind us exploded. The Z's had broken through. As one, Thompson and his team turned and leapt into the chopper. I shouted, "No!" and sprinted out onto the pad. Alpha followed, each screaming in fury or grief. With yards to spare, I watched impotently as Thompson gave me the one-finger salute while our evac lifted off, abandoning us to the dead of Fort Detrick. All right, that was chapter 10. So I hope you guys enjoyed the story so far. And come back next time. I'll try to put more of a lead time to see when I go live. Come back next time to see if they make it out. All right, you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. See ya.